Thank you for having me. Yes, sure. My name is Rula Shadid, and I am the co-director of the Palestine Institute for Public Diplomacy, and this is what PIPD stands for. We are a non-governmental organization based in Palestine that works on changing the narrative on Palestine and also working for the liberation of Palestine together with like-minded people, allies around the world, hoping that we could achieve change in collaboration with people around the world. And of course, this is why I am in Brazil. Brazil is definitely one very important country. Brazil is the biggest country in Latin America and South America. And also, there is a lot that we should be doing here and with our comrades on different struggles. But also the government have shown a good start when they actually helped with shaping the narrative on what is happening in Palestine, when the president very early on said that what is actually happening in Palestine is, as it should be called, a genocide against the Palestinian people. So we think it's important to communicate with the people here. We know that there is a gap of information. Not everyone knows what exactly is happening. People do not know much about the context of the colonization of Palestine. They still call it conflict, which is something that we have the responsibility to share information about and raise as much awareness as we can so that people can actually know why they should take a stand against the genocidal state of Israel.
Okay.
I think it is important to understand that today, in a world where international laws are facing jeopardize, are facing a really an existential threat, because we have a state that is actually practicing and doing and committing genocidal acts, and yet not being held accountable for it. So in a place where international law and the entire framework of international treaties and solidarity among communities and the rule of law, it is important to show that some states still will abide by its obligations. So in terms of Brazil, it is important that Brazil actually abide by its obligations as third state parties and do not support economically or diplomatically or politically the colonial state of Israel and the genocidal state of Israel. And so it is very, very important to share that, unfortunately, despite the fact that we see a lot of rhetoric going on among many leaders, actions are still very slow. So, for example, Brazil has 9% of its crude oil. Israel's 9% of crude oil comes from Brazil. And when the president says that they don't want to be part of the genocide and they're against the genocide, then it is also important to show that we will not support by giving oil or energy that is also used in the current genocide that is taking place in Palestine. So Brazil has a huge role also in this region. It's important to know that Brazil is to be followed. Once Brazil take a decision, it is more likely that other countries in the region will also take similar decisions. So there is a responsibility and there is an obligation. The internal political situation, internal interests, common interests, political and economic interests, it is to change that and to change your economic allies, you need to do some work. And many politicians, including governments in sensitive places like the Brazilian government, is, to take such a decision, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think also maybe lack of adequate information and the weakness of the current government is very important to understand that it will require work, and it will require efforts, and it will require courage. That is something. And on the other hand, it's also important to know that, yes, of course, the Zionist lobby is strong. It uses all sorts of intimidation. It uses all sorts of influence to affect decision makers. And we need to break from this dominance of the Zionist lobby, not only in Brazil, but also worldwide. It's time where states start thinking about their sovereignty. How do they take decisions? Do they want to be part of the countries that are being deterred to do the right thing? Or do they want to be part of the countries and states that are showing that there is another way, that we need a new system, a system that actually thinks about social justice, a system that thinks about internal interests and national interests vis-a-vis the hegemony of Western states. And this is unfortunately something that we see a lot happening in the Latin American countries and in South America. Now, oil is used in many different ways. It's used for energy, it's used for electricity and electricity grids, as well as fuel that is used for arm equipment and the army. It could be used for tanks, it could be used to refine, so crude oil specifically, when it's refined, it's used for jet fuel. And jet fuel is, of course, only used for military use, especially fighting jets and so on. So, and also it is used in supplying electricity to the illegal settlements in the West Bank. So there's a lot of ways of which the embargo is important, is to actually put pressure on the state of Israel to stop its genocidal acts against Palestinians and against the Lebanese and against the region in general, because now we're seeing the absurdity of what's also happening in Lebanon and the killing of civilians and the killings of children and so on. So when is this going to stop? It will only stop when states show that it's not okay, and they can only show that by taking measures that similar to what we have seen with South Africa, for example, South African apartheid. It didn't end until states took decisions. So it was the people fighting for liberation in their countries, and it was also the movements of solidarity among the people in general, and it was also states, even though late, but it was also states taking steps towards putting pressure on the apartheid state to stop its apartheid. So, and this is what we need to see in the world against against Israel. And I mean, just this week we saw the arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court against Netanyahu and Gallant. And this shows also that this is not Palestinians only saying that what's going on is crimes and war crimes and genocide and so on. There's no need to keep on the rhetoric of and the propaganda of the Israelis. It's already demolished. It's already, people know now that they are all lies. They are all disinformation, and not from the 7th of October. the lies have been ongoing in the propaganda from the establishment of the State of Israel, which is in 1948. And this is very important for people to know. I think it's important for the public opinion to know that yes, Brazil has signed many contracts with Israel on arms, on cyber technology, on things that are used here in Brazil. So it's also important for the people to know that Israel is exporting oppression. It exports oppression to the world. It exports oppression to the paramilitary groups, to the police forces. We know that Brazil, unfortunately, suffers from big police violence. And statistics shows that there are many crimes that are committed by the police that are not being investigated. And who does the training for these police? It is the Israeli, on many levels. Many of these trainings are done by Israeli forces, and as well as for the weapons. So the Brazilian state is using the same weapon that is being used in Palestine against Palestinians. And not only it's used against Palestinians, it's also actually developed by testing it on Palestinians. So we are a laboratory for weapons, technologies, surveillance, and many other instruments of oppression, to be able to develop those and then export them to the world. So do you, Brazilian government and the Brazilian state, do you want to continue feeding this human laboratory and continue feeding into the violence that you are suffering from in your own country, whether it is military groups or it is trafficking groups or other groups here? The weapons and these technologies are harming your own people in a huge scale. So it's important to know that there is an intersectional benefit of being responsible in the technologies and the agreements that a country does. And this also applies to Brazil. I think generally, even globally, unfortunately, we're starting to see genocide fatigue. And this is extremely dangerous. We are starting to see that the pictures that and the violations that we're seeing online, and the horrific images that are coming live out of Palestine, Gaza, and Lebanon, and other places in the region, are slowly becoming normalized, which also affects the reaction of people to it. And unfortunately, Brazil is not an exception. People know, but people have they started to lose the momentum, and this is extremely important that we remind people that nothing has changed. The situation is even worse than it started from the 7th and 8th of October. People need to understand that the Israelis are not stopping from the killing of the Palestinians, and we don't know when they're going to stop this bloodshed. When are they gonna stop burning our children alive? And the more we let this continue, the more horrific this precedent is going to be for our entire history, right? In many years to come, people and next generations will look back at this precedent, and unfortunately, I'm very worried that it will become normalized to commit such unbelievable crimes without being held accountable, without being punished, without it being stopped when it should stop, which is when it starts devastating the lives of millions. And again, this is not starting it did not start on the 7th and the 8th of October. We have been telling the world that we are facing an ethnic cleansing of our people, whether it is direct or indirect, since 1948. Our people are continuing to face the violations that you're seeing today. However, it's just the scale is different. The volume is different. And the Israeli colonial regime is just, they're seeing trial and error. They're looking at, okay, so we can push the limit a little bit and we'll see what will happen. So as long as the international community and states and people are not doing what they can, and there's a lot that can be done to stop this, we don't know until when they will continue. Maybe they aim at finishing the entire population, at killing the entire population. And how is that going to be dealt with internationally? We are now saying that the human rights framework is gone. It's dead. Not only for the Palestinians, but for the entire world. And we're also saying, on the other hand, that if the Palestinians who have been under colonization for 76 years and in Gaza for 17 years of blockade have been able to actually face the American hegemony, the American dominance, and support, military support and economic support, political support, and the Israeli, of course, as well as the Europeans, then what makes other oppressed people around the world unable to also do the same? If this group that is in very, very, very severe, dire, and super complicated and difficult situation and circumstances, if they were able to stand against the biggest powers of this world for almost 14 months now, this is also hope. It gives us hope that justice and the people who have the right and people who have been oppressed for so many years will not continue to succumb or will not continue to give in into the oppression and into the violence. They will fight back and they will continue to strive for their liberation. I would just like to say that it's very heartwarming to see how much people here, the people who know, feel the connection, and unlike many European countries, I feel that people understand what it means to be under so much oppression, and this is beautiful to see in the sense of solidarity and commitment. But it's also very important to know that, believe me, each action of each one of you makes a difference, and we cannot forget that, and we cannot allow the continuation of this brutality to go on, because it's a danger to our entire people and our entire planet.